Hey everyone, thanks for watching Bridgeport's Brightest Lights. You are watching the third part of the behind the scenes tour, and in this part I'm going to show you how I program the computers and the controller to play the lights and all the sequences that we made in the second part. So if you missed the second part, click up here to watch it, but I'll briefly go over what we did. We went into X-Lights, the sequencing software, and we created a sequence. I already had one created, but I showed you how that works. And something I forgot to mention in that part is once we're done and we save our work that we did, it makes it into a file, and it's called an FSEQ file. And once we get to the computers, we need to upload that file so the computer can read the file and then send the file to the controller, and the controller will then play the lights along with the file. So to get to the computers, you have to be on the same network as the computer and the controller. So if you are on a Wi-Fi network and it's just called Wi-Fi network 1, let's say it's called that, the computer's on that, the controller's on that, you also need to be connected to that same network to be able to connect to the computer and controller. So I am connected to that. And once you set up the computer and controller, and I already set it up, I'm just going to show you what I do to set it up. I have to give it an IP address, and to be able to change settings to the computer and controller, I have to type that IP address into a browser here that I have. And I know that IP address, and it's 192.168.1.81. That's the IP address to the main computer. And then there's a separate one for the other computer and a separate one for the controller, and I'll show you those in a minute. So let me type that IP address into the browser, and then we get the computer's interface, and this is what it looks like when you first come on. So there are a few different things when you first come on. It could tell you the temperature of the CPU. Usually it's a lot hotter than this, but since it's outside and it's below 32 degrees out, or it's colder than it usually is. There's a few settings here, but this isn't where most of the settings happen. They're in these other tabs right here that I will show you later. So if you already have everything set up, you can come right over here and click here, and it will show you the playlist. So I have two playlists. I call them Christmas Light Show 1, and then I have Christmas Light Show 2. I have so many sequences that I programmed that I didn't want to put them all into one night, and then have someone sitting by the road for 1 hour watching the whole light show. That could cause traffic, so I split it up into two different ones. So since I already have it set up, I could just click that and then click any song I want. Like, let's say I want to play Wizards in Winter. I can click that, and I can come down here and I can hit play, and if I do, it will start playing the lights on the house, and it will start sending the music out on the controller or on the transmitter. So I'm just going to play it. No one's outside and it's during the day, so it's okay. So then you have some other buttons here. You can hit previous, so you play the previous song, the next song. Stop gracefully means that it'll keep playing the song, then when the song is over, it will stop it. Stop after loop means it will finish all of the songs in this loop, then stop it, and then stop now. Well, obviously stop it right now, so I'm going to stop it now. And then you have three buttons down here. You can reboot the computer, you can shut down the computer, and you can restart the interface on the computer. But you will not be able to do any of this stuff yet until you have it programmed. So there are three main tabs that you need to program. This help tab, there's nothing really you need to program over here. This is just if you need help or need to know some stats about the computer. So the first one that I like to start with is the status control tab. And there are a different amount of settings right here. You don't have to worry about this one down here or some other ones. They aren't that important. So the status page is where we're on. This is the status page. It shows you everything about it. It says the time, if it's running, if it's not running, when is the next light show going to start, and it's going to be Christmas Light Show 1 at 5 o'clock tonight, and that is correct. So that's the status page. The next one is the hardest to set up tab. It's the network tab. And this is what I told you about, where I have to connect it to our Wi-Fi. So I'm not going to show you these settings down here because they're not important. I'm going to just show you the one in this box. So the Raspberry Pi has two different interfaces on it. It has a ETH0 or an Ethernet interface, and then a WLAN 0 or the Wi-Fi interface. So the Ethernet interface is basically a hardwire interface with an Ethernet cable, and then the Wi-Fi one is obviously wireless and Wi-Fi. So I'll start with the Wi-Fi one. So first what you gotta do is you got to enter your network name. So this is our network name here. You have to enter that, and then you have to enter the network name's password, and then you can have it set for either DHCP or static. So DHCP is what 90% of electronics use. They connect to the Wi-Fi. You enter the password on your tablet, phone, computer, and then it will automatically, your router will automatically assign it a IP address, and then it'll start working like that. But for this, we have to enter static, because if it's DHCP, the IP address can change at any time, and I won't know that. So I would need to constantly know the IP address so I can type it into the browser to get to it. So I have to set it for static, which means I have to manually input the IP address, the net mask, and the gateway. Now that might all sound crazy. Don't worry about the gateway or the net mask. Just worry about the IP address. This is where I set the IP address on our router's network to be able to get to it. Now on the Ethernet interface, this is where I set it up to connect with the controller. Now if you saw the first part, the first behind the scenes tour, you will know that the computer in the garage has an Ethernet cable going to the controller. So that's how the computer talks to the controller through the Ethernet cable, through its Ethernet interface. So the Raspberry Pi basically makes its own network on IP address 192.168.2.81, and then it doesn't have a gateway and it doesn't have a net mask. It just has the IP address, and this is how the controller connects to it. So it's very difficult, and I'm not going to explain every last detail to it because it can take a while. And then once you're done with all these settings, you have to update the interface, and that's how you set up the network page. Now, the next one that I will show you is, well, first I'll explain this. So, you know that we have if you saw the second part, or, I mean the first part of the behind the scenes tour, you will know that we have another computer in the projector box to run the projector. And that is the exact same computer as this one, and it has all these exact same settings. There are a few minor differences because it's a different computer, but that one can be set up like this one for hardwire to get to it, or Wi-Fi wirelessly to get to it. Now, I was having some problems doing it wirelessly because of how far away it was from our router, so I had to hardwire it, and I'll explain that more when I get to that one. But, so now the next tab here is the multi-sync tab. So what this page does is it allows you to sync the two computers together, because the computer in the projector box, or it's called the remote, that one runs just the projector, and then the master runs all the lights, but they need to talk to each other and be in sync so they can play the same things at the exact same time. So this page, there's nothing really you need to worry about on here. You just have to sync these two on this page. The next one is settings. These are just some settings that you can do to have the computer start, like if you want to have to stop the sequences in between each one. If the sequence doesn't stop at the end when you're programming it, you can do some stuff with audio, video, time, email, so you can have it send you a email when you want it. So like it could send you an email at the end of the light show, so I'll know that it stopped. And then some other stuff over here, but it's not really anything we need to worry about. This tab right here is if you need to back up your settings. You don't need to worry about that either. And then these three tabs you don't really need to worry about either. They're just extra stuff if you want to do more stuff with your Raspberry Pi. Like the Events tab, you can add a button to a Raspberry Pi, so if someone wants to come up and push a button at your light show, it can do something like that. That's what these extra settings are for. But this display testing button, this page allows you to test the lights with some different patterns and stuff, and then you can also do a sequence and some other stuff on here. So really the only things that you need to set up on this page is the network, some settings, and then if you have another computer, the multi-sync page tab. So if we go back to the status page, that's what we need to set up on this side. Now we're going to move on to the content setup tab. So this is where you upload all of your sequences and your playlists, and you tell the lights what time to turn on and what to do what at what time. So the first thing that you need to set up here is that you need to use is the file manager. And what this allows you to do is the files that we made in Xlights, you open your file manager and then you drag and drop the files right here, and then it'll upload them on here. So when you have the file saved on Xlights, you go into Xlights, you select the FSEQ file, and then you just drag and drop it onto here. It'll upload the sequence, but it won't upload the music. And then you need to go on to your file manager, or you need to go onto your files and take the audio file that goes with it and drag and drop it onto here. So this is all my sequence files right here, and then this is all the audio files over here. And then if you have video, you can upload video. If you have images, you can upload images. You can upload effects, scripts, logs, and uploads is just other stuff that doesn't fall under these categories. So once you have the sequences and the music uploaded, you then go down to playlist. And then playlists allows you to add all the songs together to play them in a playlist. Like Christmas Light Show 1, that's all the songs in Christmas Light Show 1 joined together to play in a loop. So I have playlists already made right here, but if you didn't, you'd type in the new playlist name and hit create, but I'm just going to show you Christmas Light Show 1. So then once you click that, you can change the name, you can add a description, and then you can save, delete, copy, rename, randomize, reset. This tells me how many songs I have in here and how long the first playlist is. The first playlist is basically 30 minutes with 15 songs. And then here, what you do, this would be empty because you wouldn't have any songs on here if you first uploaded this. But what you do is you'd select sequence and media for when you want to upload your sequence and songs. Sequence only is if you just want the lights to flash but no music with it, and then media only just with music. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff on here that you don't need to worry about. But what I use most of the time is sequence and media. And then you'd select your sequence. So if I wanted to add YMCA Christmas version, I'd click that, and then I can come down here and then select the audio file that goes with it, which is YMCA 2. And then I'd hit, you don't need to worry about video out, just leave it to default, and then you'd click add, and then you'd add it here, but I don't need to add that on here. And then in the lead in and lead out is where I have a special script to have it send me an email when the light show ends. So this is how you set up the playlist. And then I have some other ones set up. I had the Halloween light show set up for when it was Halloween. I have this one you don't need to worry about. This one you don't need to worry about. I have a New Year's Eve one set up. I have a Christmas Eve one set up. And then I have just the second playlist because they switch every night. And then other is just other songs I don't use. It's just extras. And then you'd come down here to Scheduler. And then this is where you set up all the schedules to start and stop the light show. So I'd select which playlist I want. So Christmas Light Show 1. Then I can select which days I want it on. I hit day mask because I have it switch every other day. Then set it for every other day. I tell it when to start. It started Black Friday, and this one is going to end the day before Christmas Eve because I have a special playlist that's going to be on Christmas Eve. And then I can select the times. This is military time, or 24-hour time, so 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. and then I can select what kind of stop do I want. I could hard stop it right at 9 o'clock, or if it's in the middle of a song, it will come to a dead stop. I can have it finish the song, or I can have it finish all of the songs in the playlist, and I have it set to just finish the song. And then Christmas Light Show 1 down here, I also have it on Friday, but on Friday we run the light show an hour and 30 minutes longer because it's the weekend, so I selected a different time. And then I set up the Christmas Light Show 2, and then the Christmas Eve one. And I still have to set up the light show from the day after Christmas to the day before New Year's Eve. But I don't have that set up yet because I have this on here. And that's how you set up the schedule to start the light show. And then these last few things you don't need to worry about. I don't use these two things. This is just, like I said, if you want to use extra things like a button or just something else, like maybe you could put a donation box out there, so when someone inserts like a dollar bill into it, a light sensor will see it, then it will play a small sequence saying thank you. Something like that, but I don't use any of that. So then once you have all of that set up, you can go back to the status page, and then you'll be able to see your light show, and you'll be able to play it. You'll be able to hear the audio if you have something plugged into the audio jack, but you won't have any lights start yet because you don't have this input-output tab set up yet. So on this one, there is one thing, only one thing on this tab that you need to set up, and it's the channel outputs. You don't need to worry about channel inputs, output processors. You can use this if you want to add your pixel models on here. You don't really need to, though. And then GPIO inputs is where if you add a button and stuff. So I'd go to channel outputs. And then, like I told you in X-Lights, the controller runs off from E131, if you remember that. So I come on here, and then I hit Enable E131, add this little check, select this little box. And then remember in the last part how I was talking about universes and channels and all of that crazy stuff? This is where you need to put all of that information in. The start channel, the end channel, how many universes there is, what size it is. And then this will allow the controller to be able to read, say, oh, this pixel is on this channel, so I need to turn this channel on to do that. So all you need to do is set how many outputs you want, add a description if you want, select the output type, I hit multicast, and then it can be confusing when you first set this up, but if you already have it set up in X-Lights and you know X-Lights is right, there's a special feature that I didn't go over in X-Lights to upload this on here, so you don't need to input all this information, but I didn't talk about that because I just manually put it in. I don't know why I didn't do that, though. And then there's some other things you can set up, like if you have pixels attached directly to the Raspberry Pi, you can set that up here. If you have LED panels, so you won't really know what those are, maybe you will, but it's like almost like a screen of a 1 foot long screen by 6 inches tall, but the lights inside are spaced farther out apart, and then you could set those up on here. I don't have any panels, but I do hope to add panels one year. I'm not sure which year, though. And then other is if you have a projector setup, which I will go over in the other computer, because this one doesn't have a projector connected to it, so it wouldn't be on here. And that's basically how you set up everything on a Raspberry Pi. So that was a lot of information, and I hope I didn't go too fast, but now let me show you the remote Raspberry Pi or computer, the remote computer. So you come on here, and then the IP address for the remote, I have that too right here. Let me look. That is 192.168.2.83. Now the reason that this number is a 2 not a 1 is because it's plugged into the controller, because I told you I had to hardwire it due to problems with the length from the router. So if I push that, you get almost the exact same interface as this one. This is the master, and then this is the remote. Now this shows a little error, but that's because the projector is not plugged in, because I always bring it in every night because of the cold and stuff. So on this one, it has all the exact same settings. You have network, multi-sync, settings, file manager, playlist, input, output, blah, 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 blah. Now, since this one is outside, the temperature is very cold on it. It's below 50 degrees, but since this one is in the garage, that's sort of insulated, I guess. It's just closed. It's hotter. It's almost 100 degrees on it. So, the only difference with this one is there is no selecting what to start from here. That's because it's a remote, so it talks to the master. And the way I change whether it's a remote or master is right here. I can select this and do some other stuff with it. So you don't need to set up all the settings that you do over here on the master, because the remote is already sort of set up with the master. The thing that you definitely need to still set up, though, is the network with the IP address and everything. Since there's no wireless, I leave all of this empty. There's no IP address, no router or anything. I just have it going through the Ethernet onto the controller. And I have it set up on the Ethernet thing. So you do need to set up multi-sync for the remote, and then, oh wait, not on the remote, I'm sorry, you don't need to do that on the remote. But you can do the settings if you want. You can do the backup to back up that, but you don't really need to do anything else over here. Now, on the file manager, you need to upload the same files that you did on the master file manager. You need to upload the same ones, but you don't need to upload the audio, because the audio comes out of the master right here. So, there is no need to set up audio on the remote unless you had your audio device plugged in here. So you can see I have no audio here, but I have the exact same sequences here. Now, since this is the remote, I don't need to set up the playlist. I don't need to set up the scheduler, because the master already does that for me. It just tells the remote to start the certain thing. Now, over here, back at channel outputs, I told you about the projector. So I have no E131 data because there is no pixels. I just, in the other tab, I have, which they call it a virtual matrix. That's the projector. And then I set how many pixels it has up and down, how many it has with the width, how many it has with the height, the color order, RGB. And then I also do need to set up the start channel and the channel count and stuff. So that's really all I need to set up on the remote. It's really simple. There's not as much as the master. Now, there's one other thing I have to show you, and that is the controller. Because you have to set up the controller like you did with the master computer. And the controller just takes the data that the master sends out. Let me close this tab because we don't need it anymore. It takes the data that the master sends out through its Ethernet port into the controller's Ethernet port, and then it changes the data to pixel data and then sends it out to the pixel. So the IP address for the controller is 192.168.2.80.82. And then this is the controller tab. It looks much different than this one because it's the controller. So there's no tabs that come down. You just click how you set it up here. You do have a status page. You can see how many universes of data it's receiving and how much data. You can see the temperature that's set for on here, the voltage input, and the time. The time is off. It says January 1st, 2001 at 12:32 a.m. That's incorrect because every time I turn this off, it loses the time information because there's no battery in it. But if I was to put a battery in it, it wouldn't lose it. But there's really no need to because I don't need to know the time. And then when I first turn this on, it's even colder than both the computers. It has two temperatures on here. The temp 2, it was at 32 degrees when I turned it on, and then temp 1 was at 28 degrees when I turned it on. So it was very cold, but it did heat up. It's at 41 and 54 now. So this is just the status page right there. You can't start any sequences because it doesn't have the files on here. It's sort of like a transformer. It transforms the data from the computer, that data, to the pixel data. It doesn't really do anything, but you can set it up for that, but I don't have it set up for that. So the test tab is I can select the certain ports that everything is plugged into, then hit enable, and I can select different colors for testing. There's red, green, blue, white. And then inputs, you don't really need to do anything with the inputs. This is just if you had a button connected to the controller, but you don't really need to set up any of this because you don't have any sequence files on here. The network configuration is the main setup thing. Like the master, you have to set up the IP address and the gateway. The gateway is the IP address of the master, and the IP address on here is the IP address that's close to the master's one, and then you can set up the DNS and stuff, but you don't need to worry about that. And then once you set this up, you have to save and reboot. The E131 ArtNet tab is where you set up the universes in here. Now you have to set up the universes in X-Lights, the computer, and the controller, so the controller will know what universes it's supposed to receive. I have 4 universes on X-Lights, 4 on the master, and then 4 on the controller, so everything should be good. Then output settings, if there are 2 things on here, serial outputs. This is if you had some stage lighting with DMX or stuff like that, you don't need to worry about that. I do wish to add a stage light on here on my light show 1 year, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. But the string ports is where I set up how the pixels are put out on the ports. So the controller has 16 ports. If you saw the first part, it has 16 little green connectors on here. I only use the last 4. I have to set up the universe that each port is set up on, what channel, how many pixels there are, the direction, the color, brightness, and then some other stuff. So like with the arches and fence are together, so that's 227 pixels. That starts on channel 397 of universe 2, and the end universe is universe 4 at end channel 57 for that universe. And I can select the brightness. I leave all of the brightness for everything except the pumpkins. I don't use the pumpkins anymore now though because it's Christmas. I set everything at 40% brightness. 100% brightness or higher than that is very bright, and you could get some complaints from your neighbors. And if I was to set it up any higher, it would blow the fuse that is on the controller. So I leave it at 40% brightness. And then that's basically everything you have to set up on the controller. There's not that much. There is another tab over here where you could set the time, but if you set the time, it's gonna lose the time once you turn it off. You can select if you have a fan on it, what temperature to turn on the fan, and then how long to use it for. And then there's a little help tab over here, and that's everything for the controller. So that was a lot of information. I hope I didn't confuse you too much showing you all of that. That should be the last part to the Christmas light show behind the scenes tour. I hope you have enjoyed the Christmas light show playlist number 1 that I put up. There are 4 other songs that are in the real playlist, but YouTube did not allow me to put them up due to copyright issues. So I guess if you want to see the real full light show, come to the light show live. I will have the second playlist, and I hope I'll be able to put out most of the songs for that one out on Christmas Eve. And that should be everything. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and hit the subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the notification bell too, because every time I put up a new video, you'll be notified. Thank you for watching and have a good day.